Alrighty folks, want to welcome you back to another video from Yates Computers Tips and Reviews. This one is more probably business line in. These are actually wireless access points. These ones should all need software to control the access points. So basically, you'll have to have a switch and a computer running the software on how these actually work. These aren't the same as this kind of an access point where all the control software is in here. Basically, you'd have a device. The newer ones have a control box about this size. You rack mount it, put it in a room, run out all the cables to all these different units, and they control the units. Certifications, licensings, a lot of other things do apply with these. So this is not pretty much a home grade user type of thing. This would be for a business. This is also one of the factors where they bring up the Wi-Fi 6 and stadiums, and you have all this coverage, are basically using things like these, different brands, different styles, different things that are out there that have the different broadcasts. Anybody that knows 2.4, 5G doesn't have the distance of 2.4, doesn't have the speed as 2.4, has slower speeds, but 2.4 has a longer distance. It can carry a longer distance. So this is one of the things that I wanted to elaborate on for business-wise. You have access points. These are access points. There are different kind of access points. You have mesh networks that kind of have access points. This is pretty much a standalone access point is what I would call it. Difference also between these and a mesh network or something else is how it can get power. A lot of them have multiple options. This one, this brand, really all you have is a network port. There is no power that you can run to this unit. I believe this one's different. This one is completely different. This one actually is kind of really hard to see in there. It has a power port and it actually has a network port. I believe it has 2 network ports in there. And those are for different things. So this one can be actually directly powered. This one uses something PoE, Power over Ethernet. A lot of these devices, even I believe this one, should be able to be PoE'd. So what that means is you run a network cable to where you want, you mount that up there, and you put the network cable in there, take that power cable back to wherever your internet signal is coming from. You have switches and other things. I don't think I have anything that's PoE. That basically you would plug it in to a port. It would be a PoE switch. So that provides electrical out on your network cable. So when you plug that into that switch or that device or the controller, some of these actually have physical controller, rack mount controllers that are like a switch that has basically like this. Has basically all these kind of features in it. Lots of times there's a firewall. There's other kind of security settings in the newer ones. Depending on the grade you buy, you can get extra features put in it. More expensive. So basically you'd have a device similar to this. You plug it in, provides power to that unit, and you're done. It's a lot nicer than, okay, I'm going to use this kind of unit that has a power. Then you got to get an electrician to run electrical, put an outlet. You got to make sure the cord be able to reach. You got to make sure it all gets hidden too. Well, because now you have a power cord and you have a network cord. And of course, you have a problem with interference because now you have electrical next to your network. You really don't want that. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like that, is the cost of adding all of those other things. Run your network cable, plug it in, hook that up, and you're good to go. Also, if you have power problems, if you put your control unit on a UPS, a big UPS, where you have enough voltage to run that long enough, if you have a generator or anything else, that's good, because here's the other issue, is you might have certain areas that have backup emergency power. So if the power goes out, certain areas have power. Usually your communication room, your data rooms, your front desks, your lighting, you have some other things that have backup power. Elevators, type of things like that, so they run. These will stay online because they draw power from your communication room or wherever you have this. Hopefully you have it on a UPS or backup power or emergency power or whatever you want. These you have plugged in some weird location may not stay on, because unless that outlet is connected to the same circuit with emergency power or backup power, they'll shut down. How really important is that to you to have those features? That's up to you to make those decisions. But again, that's a whole security thing. That's a whole lot of other issues there that you'd have to figure out, depending on what your situation is, how you're using it. Maybe you have these access points in and you have no wired network, and that's the only way your computer communicates. A lot of these computers nowadays have wireless cards integrated into them, so you can actually attach to that access point and start running network cables to every workstation. So that is kind of a nice, convenient thing, is not to have those wires to every convenient location, because maybe you want to pick them up and clean and do some other things that are underneath, or you don't want all those network cables. You don't want network cables running down under your desks, down under the floor, and all of these things. That's why everybody's going to wireless. Everybody knows the reasons, a million reasons why you go to Wi-Fi or wireless. So you have issues like that, because if you have a computer that's on a battery backup or on emergency power that it stays on, but then your internet is off because your access point don't work, well, it kind of defeats the purpose. So I wanted to touch on this factor. Most home users and stuff probably won't ever go to this kind of a sort, but you have businesses, you have small businesses, you have community centers, you have other little things, you have services, you have all these other little organizations out there that may be running something like this that don't really realize what this actually is and how it actually works. Again, you paid someone to come in, set this device up, get it to work, and all these things, and you just have it there. You have an IT company or whatever you call in case you have troubles that could come out and troubleshoot it. Again, this is something that you need to know so that you can make sure your business is in the proper place. Make sure you got all your documentation on it. Make sure you understand how it's set up. Is it this unit with PoE, or is it this unit that actually is plugged in somewhere? Those are some important factors. Because if you blow breakers, or if you're even doing electrical work, they come in and turn off something to work on a certain area, and this device is on there, and it kills your entire network to half of your building. There's nothing you can do. It has to be off because they need to do work. These are some of these little factors that come into play that really I wanted to point out when you design and develop it and you're planning to put some of these devices in. maybe you're looking at putting something like this in the future. Maybe your business is growing. Nowadays, you have all these restaurants and everything else that all use these little tablets. If you got a big enough restaurant where you need to put this in, bingo halls, all of them now have these electronic tablets. You need to have something like this in. Could be, I won't say a casino, but it could be a, what are they, the military club things, the Moose Lodge, Elks Lodge, all these other places that have bingo or something. Maybe you want to follow the trend of everybody else with these electronic tablets and all these electronic things that you can do. Internet gaming is really big right now. They're making this legal everywhere. Who knows where the future is going to be? Maybe you have internet gaming lounges. I remember in the old days, you used to have gaming lounges. Gaming lounges were not gambling. That's where you used to go and play Nintendo and our arcade games, and you had all kinds of stuff. Those were the game places where you used to go and play on multiple Xboxes that were networked together against other people. You had gaming lounges. Nowadays, maybe you're looking at doing a gaming event. You have gaming tournaments, gaming teams that still exist. Maybe you're looking at doing some of those type of little things. But of course, most of that would probably be better off hardwired because of the speeds. But now you're getting into some of the newer technologies that are getting pretty quick. The next phase, the next gen might be something that everybody goes for. Might be really good for those type of things. Event halls, concert halls, all those big buildings with big spaces that you can use for other things. Maybe you're looking to expand what your venues can handle. There's things like this. So these are options that are out there without having to buy a bunch of those type of devices, configuring them all independent, linked, sharing access points off of them. You can do Wi-Fi mesh, merge them all together. But Wi-Fi mesh, you have an issue with how many devices can actually communicate to one device. And if you have a 100 meg connection or a gigabit connection on the device that communicates out, that's going to make a difference on how much data. If you have a bunch of devices, 8 mesh units connected together, well, this one only accepts 6 that I have. You have 6 mesh networks connected together, and you have 100 users on there trying to use it. Your end device that is actually connected to the internet is going to be handling a lot of bandwidth and a lot of transfers and a lot of data. So that device is going to be used pretty heavily. So that's why they have certain things like this where you have 30 users attached to this one, 30 users attached to that one, 30 users attached to that one. It has a network cable to carry that data out instead of having 100 users on one device carrying out that data. So that's one of the factors I wanted to bring up with these. That's where these devices come in differently than a mesh network or a standard Wi-Fi network. A lot of places really don't care anymore. They really didn't care. Oh, you want to rent a convention room? Okay, there's Wi-Fi access there. It's one like router. That's it. Everybody can connect to that, and that's it. There's some places that each room has their own device access point in that room. They can actually subdivide it so that the traffic that's in that room does not communicate to that traffic in another room. If you have multiple meeting rooms, it just depends. Depends on security wise. It depends on how secure you want to be and how safe your network wants to be. Of course, you could just say, hey, this is what we got. Make the best of it. But now everything's on the internet, everything's streaming. There's a lot of data getting transferred. But you have the quality of service you can raise up by putting in a network. What kind of network? How do you want it to be? Of course, you can put in multiple mesh networks, mesh on one side, mesh on the other side to divide it. You can put in a lot of things. You can put in that router like I was showing before, with the firewall, with the Wi-Fi, all these type of things. And you can put access points. You can run these lines out to different access points where they come back and feed into here. But it's kind of the same as the mesh network. This one's going to be doing a lot of work. This one has the firewall. It has where it can hand out IP addresses. You can have it, each access point hand out IP addresses or all come out of this unit out to all the other units. That's the way I have it configured, so that when they move around, the IP address stays with that device instead of it getting an IP here and an IP in here and an IP here. It uses the same IP because we don't have that much traffic on it on a lot of the ones that I recommend. But you can do that. That's the way I had it at home. Access points. So that way if I can go on one device and see who's connected, how many people are connected, who's connected, what kind of data. If it's some device that somehow got connected onto my network that shouldn't be there, I can block it, I can ban it, I can boot it, I can do anything I want from one device instead of logging into this device and then remoting into another device, checking that device. And so there's a management factor too. Same with these. You have one device that now controls it all with the different access points. And depending on how far and how range and all of that type of stuff depends on what you might want to do. Let's say you need 10 of these in your business. Well, you can't hook up 10 to this unless you put another switch or something else on it. So it might end up being better just to have the whole controller and everything all together with all the ports you need and run out of that. Because now you'll have this, and then maybe you need something else, and then you need something else. And when you can have that all in one unit out to one of these. Not to mention, it gives you a lot of growth potential. Maybe you want this in 2 of your meeting rooms, and you're contemplating adding it to more. Maybe you have an older network in a certain area that works out good, that's way on this side of the building, but you want to add something on that side of the building. You might decide, well, let me put this in because this will cover all of that side of the building, but then I can draft it all the way over. I can migrate it into the rest of the building. Because maybe you're running Wi-Fi B, G, H, whatever, N, whatever other network, and you decide you want to go to Wi-Fi 6. Well, depending on where you need it. Maybe you have offices and stuff on this side that would really like to have the Wi-Fi 6 for their laptops and all these type of things that go on for meetings and all these type of things. So you don't really have anything over on, you have that on this side, but then you have maybe an older unit on this side and you bring this unit in and you can control your cost because you buy your main unit, you buy 2 units of this, you set it up, run wiring all where you need to all at one time to control your costs. If you have someone in your IT support or someone that can do it, someone with the knowledge to do it, run your lines. Not to mention, it doesn't all have to be done at one time. Maybe you run the 2 lines you need, get that set up, put the 2 access points in, and then you think, well, from this side of the building to that side of the building, we need to upgrade that side, but maybe you have nothing in the middle. Maybe you just want to run it all the way down, fill in the whole building because you have it. Well, it might be a project that you take 3 years, 4 years on. Because you do one part, and then you can do another part so you can spread out the cost. It's not like you have to go out and pay 10 grand at one time. Same thing with those kind of devices. You can buy one time and add another one, and configure and add another one and add another one. You can do that type of stuff. So it's an expansion that you can do. What if you have an outside eating area and all of a sudden they want Wi-Fi out there? They make them where they're for outside. They have access points for outdoor that you can mount. So there's a lot of different variables out there on this. For those kind of devices, I haven't seen too many that are really rated for outdoor. There's some out there, but I'm not too sure. But I know for business grade, there are a lot. When you get into pretty much any make or model that you're looking at, of course, you got to look at your licensing, your software, your hardware, all those kind of costs, and determine, do they have the kind of access points you want? Are they ceiling mount, wall mount? What kind of features they have? All of those type of things. Do they support, is it PoE? Is it, all of those type of factors? Figure out what you want. You have these kind of options. So it was really kind of a factor of making this, because this goes back into the firewall, switches, routers, access points, all of these type of things. This goes into more of that. But this is, again, more of a business grade. Apartments, any of those type of things that have multiple floors with multiple things that maybe you need to broadcast a lot of internet out. Can't really think of too many things other than like stadiums and event halls and hotels and other things like that would use these kind of things. But it's kind of one of those things too where I've seen it where they market it for home. People are putting them in homes. Maybe you have a new home that you're having built where they give you options of these. Where they pre-wire it, have it all set. You want to know. Again, is it a powered unit or is it a PoE unit? Is it one that supports both? Before you go and put in all of you run a network cable thinking, okay, I'll be putting in a unit like this. It's PoE and I just put it in, no problem. But then you order something that actually like this that you need power for, that isn't PoE, that doesn't support PoE. Then you have to put power in. So then they have to come back in and tear everything up and run power. So that's one of the main factors I wanted to bring up, is there are two variables to this. Third variable in PoE. There's actually two PoEs. There's PoE and PoE, I think, plus. There's one that's a higher voltage PoE. And knowing which one this device actually takes is really kind of important, because that depends on what kind of device you have it hooked to. Some switches and routers and stuff like that that are PoE and PoE plus will tell you this is PoE plus, but it's only so many ports are PoE plus, and then the rest are PoE. So it's different. So like certain, like I think it's security cameras and certain other things that use the higher voltage have to use the PoE plus. So that's one of the variables when it comes into these. And I wanted to show these because really you can go online if you know what the brand is that you're looking for, and so you say, oh, I want a Cisco, or I want NVIDIA, or I want this kind, or I want that kind. and you go online and you search for it, you can find it. But understanding what it is before you can actually go look for it, I don't see that information. Yeah, they'll go through and explain all about this unit and how to install it and all the configurations and all the security stuff. But how do you determine this is the unit you want, or that unit you want, or that unit I showed you earlier you want? How do you know which unit you want? Well, that's what this video is here for, is to show you what possibilities there are. And for you to understand there's a cost and licensing and other things that have to do with this. Not to mention, you need a system to control this. Either a standalone system, or there's systems that are controlled from an actual computer. You put the software in and that relays out and controls that. That's pretty much the old-fashioned way. A lot of these things now are used with control units that are mounted into a server room, and it's distributed out to all these access points. So that's the more modern way of doing it. You can do it for homes, but of course you got to have the space for that kind of equipment. You got to have a space for all your server equipment, your rack mountable equipment, all of that type of stuff. Some of it is just like a one unit that you can actually just lay on a shelf probably, but you have all these cables and stuff you're gonna have to see. So I wanted to touch base on that, do a short video. It's not very short, but again, wanted to show you what they are, because I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure you've seen them in certain places. Other factor is some of these are ceiling mounts, but some of them are like if you have a drop ceiling or stuff that will mount to the drop ceiling, and some of them are recommended to mount it to the ceiling above the drop ceiling because of the brackets and all these other things and the wiring and all these things. So you really got to look at also that if you're in a business and you have a drop ceiling. Is this actually designed to hang from a drop ceiling? Or is it one that is really designed, like this one, I believe, is really designed to mount on a wall? Because it has the two little screw hooks, you put that on and you hang it on the wall. So it's not really designed for drop ceiling devices. So, because this slides open for you to actually have access to the ports. So one's internet and one's console and one's power. You have the diagram right there, what's what. So that's one of the things I really wanted to touch on, is the real differences between the two, what they are. Because when you get into looking at some of this stuff, it can get a little confusing. It can be like, oh, well, I have all these to choose from, and I'll just take this one. You really need to look a little bit more into it to figure out what it is and how it works. What software it is, if there's software upgrade fees, if there's all these other things you might want to look at. How hard is it to update? If there's BIOS software or anything else to do on these units. Most of the time, I don't think anybody ever updates any of that stuff. Most of the time, it's just installed and that's the way it is. But again, if you're troubleshooting and you're having issues, you have someone that installed this, those are some of those factors you want to look at. Also, if you're having problems with that, look at how the wiring's run. Because now you know, is it a plug-in or is it a PoE? Other factor with PoE that I found out within the last couple of years that I really didn't know is there's actually two PoEs. Basic PoE. There's outer pair, inner pair. So basically, it's power through the network lines you are not using for data, and I believe the other one is power through the lines of data that you are using. So there's two different PoEs. I did not realize that. I thought the PoE was on the lines you weren't using and that was it. Had an issue, had to do some research, do some homework on it, and I found that fact out, and I was kind of surprised that, man, I never knew that. I never knew that there was two different PoEs. So that's something I wanted to bring up because it caught me by surprise. I'm sure people don't really realize. I'm sure the technology's gotten to the point where it accepts either one. But that's another factor you kind of want to look at, because the worst thing you want to do is buy your access points, controller, and PoE, and then you hook it all up, and suddenly it doesn't work. Well, because that's putting out PoE here on one way, and that's not accepting it over here because it wants it the other way. Some devices are smart enough where it can detect what's on the other end and change, but some devices can't. So that's one of the things I found with PoE. That would affect something like this, cameras, whatever else you attach. So I wanted to bring that up in this video because it can directly relate to this. So I think that's it. I think I've gone on long enough on this. These are just simple access points for the business to show you what the differences are, what the variables can be. I'm sure there's more out there, more variables, more different devices, sizes. I know I have another one here that is a smaller unit. Let me see if I can grab that. It's actually a smaller unit. So there are actually different size units, and there's variables to them. And I'm not promoting this brand, it's just this is what I got to show. But you can see it's quite a bit different size. So maybe you don't want something quite as bulky. Something small that you can mount up on the ceiling where people don't notice. I've seen some that are just giant discs. They're just giant. So that's another consideration you might want to have is when you're going to do this. I've seen them when they mount on the wall. They're just big boxes, just big as this monitor. I'm like, wow, where did they... they're big and bulky. I'm sure there's reasons why they bought that unit, but to me, it looked really bad. So you have those factors where, okay, maybe, a little light, smaller unit might suit what you need, might work out. There's little variables you want to look at, not to mention to look at what they're going to look at and look like when you actually put them up. A nice little round shape compared to a big bulky squared shape. Of course, then you have, these, they light up around the ring and stuff when they're active. I think this one lights up around the little ring. There's some that light up down below. There's a lot of little looks too that might spark your interest, might be more to your setting, your scenery, depending on what kind of event you have. If you're trying to be a real tech place with all kinds of nice flashy lights and stuff, maybe that'll fit into your theme by picking a certain brand over a certain brand that has all the same features. Little tiny things that some people look at that might influence what you want. So I wanted to touch on that because that is one thing I've seen. Some of the controllers will actually let you control the lighting on them too. to make it so it turns off, doesn't show, you don't see it. Might be features you want to look at. Nowadays, they probably will let you even control what colors it is, like memory and stuff in your computer. You can change the colors with the control. You want to look at those features if that's something you're really interested in. Those are some of those little variables that really some people are really interested in. Because if you've gone through all the effort of running LED lights around your room and you're using it in a theater room or something of that sort, or maybe you want it completely dark so you can watch a movie and you have that access point up there and it's blinking and it's shining big bright light out of it, it's going to destroy that whole atmosphere of that room. So you might want to consider looking at, does it have an option to dim that out and you don't see it? So I think that will actually wrap it up, because I think that covers everything I can possibly think of, to the little minor things, to cosmetics, to how it works, how it runs, letting you know about software, server controls, all of these type of things that come into play. Make sure you hit the like, hit the subscribe. Come on, guys, we've got to get those subscriptions up. Forward this link to other people, let people know about it. Spread the word. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.